Well, hello everybody. Based on the title of my presentation, you all know I'm based in New Zealand, but working for Tonkin Taylor, we've been working both in Australia and in New Zealand, so I think it provides a good place to compare them both and get some learnings. And in previous roles, I worked in local government in New Zealand as well, so I've got some practical experience in that space. So just thought to start with, what is a good circular economy strategy? So to me, it is something that has a very clear vision. It really should be evidence-based. It'd be great if it can be really connected to your community or your stakeholders. Of course, it needs to be practical and actionable and enable that systems change or contribute to that. But the successful development and implementation of a circular economy strategy requires a proactive approach to addressing potential challenges along the way. So this presentation combines insights from our experience in the private and public sector in Australia and New Zealand, with a particular focus on strategies that we have employed to overcome some of these key barriers to success. In our experience, while each organisation is unique, there are a lot of common threads that have underpinned our success in developing strategies. So based on that, I picked kind of 6 common challenges that we come across, being developing a shared understanding of a circular economy, aligning to broader organisational priorities, identifying the level of influence that you have, demonstrating return on investment, practical action and flexibility. So I will cover off on those 6 points. So the circular economy, as we've kind of heard this morning, is multi-level and very complex. It is a system or an economy which is, very holistic, and it's actually not just about the waste sector, it's about, the economy more broadly. And within that system, of course, there's lots of different networks, like the Resource Recovery Network is an example of one of those, so you can look at it at that network level. It can be also looked at within your organisation, and of course at that individual level. And there's lots of internal and external kind of considerations that you kind of need to consider in those things. So it's really good when you are starting to develop your strategy to think about developing a shared understanding of what a circular economy actually is. The importance of internal buy-in in that process is really contingent on that understanding, and you can really look at how what the circular economy means within your organisation or within your community as you are working through that initial stage of your plan. So one way to develop a shared understanding is to look at your broader organisation or community priorities and aligning with those. And just to draw on an example, some work that we have done with 3 councils in Taranaki, which is in the North Island of New Zealand. They were developing their waste management minimisation plan, which is another kind of word for a circular economy plan. When they were thinking about what that plan, would be, what their vision and their strategic framework was going to be from a circular economy, they of course had the circular economy shift that is bandied around. They had the New Zealand Waste Strategy and Emissions Reduction Plan kind of drivers from that national policy perspective, but they also wanted to really incorporate their broader council visions, so their specific council visions and broader community outcomes that they already had within the 3 councils, and bring that into that strategic framework. And then alongside that, a really genuine focus on understanding Te Ao Māori, which is the Māori worldview, and embedding that within their strategic framework. So in doing that, they were able to develop like a strategic framework that kind of set the scene for where they wanted to go in the future. Alongside that, aligning with priorities, a really key factor in success is stakeholder engagement. That helps to generate that shared understanding. Again, coming back to the Taranaki example that we had, that I just referenced in the previous slide, when the three councils were developing their circular economy thinking, they wanted to do some real genuine engagement with their community, and did a really comprehensive kind of stakeholder engagement process throughout the plan development at key points. And this ranged from general surveys of their community to specific focus workshops with key stakeholders. And it started with asking, you know, where are we in our current situation? How well do you think we're doing? You know, where are the gaps, where are the issues, where are the opportunities, and talking to them. They also co-designed kind of vision statements, like where do we want to be, and actually co-designed action plans. So did a lot of work over 12 months engaging with all their different communities, and included a kind of a separate stream with the iwi, which is like the local tribes in Taranaki, saying what from a Te Ao Māori perspective, you know, what is really important to you in the waste space. So this was, of course, a real co-design kind of stakeholder engagement, so really full on and high level, and took a lot of time, but actually it was a good opportunity to also generate a kind of a shared understanding of what a circular economy meant. It was also a good opportunity to start telling the story about where we were at in terms of the circular economy journey that we were on, and getting an understanding of where everybody else was at so that we could align all of that together in a plan. So it actually made for a lot of upskilling of all of our stakeholders, and everyone kind of really coming together and generating ownership over the plan when it was finally produced at the end of the process. Of course, not everyone has the resource and the time to do some full-on kind of stakeholder engagement within their organisation or their community. So it is quite good when you're starting a project to think, how much time and resource do I have? I want to maximise that as much as possible to get a feel for my stakeholders and my community. So aligning your level of engagement with the capacity of being able to deliver that in your community. The other thing to just be really conscious of is the level of influence that you have in that circular economy space. Of course, it is a system, and like it's very overwhelming to think, well, I can't change the whole system, so what can I do? And just being really like deliberate in that process. So I've just got a couple of examples of around how we've kind of approached that from a local government versus an organisational level. A project that we've been working on in Hastings and Napier, which is in the North Island of New Zealand on the East Coast, was looking at that circular economy and agreeing, you know, what are the things that we can really influence. And of course, with the council, it is traditionally offering that resource recovery infrastructure and services, collection services, transfer stations, things like that. But of course, in that use and repair kind of thing, you can help your community to understand reducing their waste. You can also support local stuff through local policy, you know, make bylaws that will drive certain changes in a community. You can advocate to your government, for instance, or you can be a leader through your procurement strategies, which is kind of what we've seen in some of the presentations today. And of course, you know, collaboration, sharing the stuff that you do know in terms of waste data and the opportunities and stuff that are out there. The other kind of perspective, I guess, is within your organisation. You know, the level of influence here is you've probably got a lot more influence on what your organisation can do, and you will have a really good understanding of all the kind of material flows and stuff. And just an example of that, we're a part of a project with One and Water to do their circular economy roadmap, and we did all the material flows and generated that solid foundation of understanding around, and then they could identify some true, real actions that they could focus on going forward. The next key thing is to kind of demonstrate that there will be a tangible return on investment for your circular economy initiatives. To address the challenge of quantifying the potential impact of circular economy initiatives, action planning processes should be carefully aligned with kind of your SMART targets. Targets are really important to kind of set that roadmap. What do we want to achieve? And that gives you a good, clear roadmap for implementation. It also is really great for telling that story, about, where we've kind of come from, where we are now, and then what impact will these actions have on where we're going in the future. And this graph is come from the Taranaki example I referred to earlier in my presentation. They've been on their journey for a while. So the initial kind of blue line is their previous plan and what actions they implemented in their last plan. So you could see that from the local government perspective, they made some real impact. So it's like, actually, we're doing quite well, and actually we want to carry this on, and these are some actions that we can do in the next 6 years. And then looking forward, if we continue on this path, we're going to achieve, this amount of reduction in landfill. So presenting that story with where you've come from, what you want to do, and where you think you're going to head is really important. The other purpose of targets, of course, is being able to monitor your progress. And this is key to demonstrating that you are actually making some progress on your action and actually demonstrating that the value for money or the value in investing in those actions. The next thing that is really important, I think, is having practical and effective actions in your plans. So that if you pull together all of that evidence, that background data, you're able to analyse, where we're currently at, what issues, gaps, opportunities do we have going forward, and then you can identify your priority areas where you can take specific action. Once you've kind of got that, it's really good to look at a combination of key drivers for change. And at that kind of simple level, we've kind of identified 3 things that you kind of need to do in combination to have success in the implementation of your actions. And one is policy, infrastructure, and education. So if you don't have all 3 of those, then it's likely that the action that you want to make is not going to really have the impact that you want. For example, you might want to change your collection to add FOGO or, glass or whatever it is. But if you just roll out the service without telling anyone about it, of course, people are going to go, what's this? Why am I doing it? And they're not going to engage. So you need to support that with education. And also you might want to support it with a local bylaw saying, actually, we don't want green waste or FOGO in our landfill bins, so we're going to ban that. That's just an example of how you kind of have to combine all those things together to get your successful action. And then you can present that in not specific actions so as much, but a program-based action plan. So your program is like commercial waste. So this is our issue. We want construction demolition waste to be managed better. So you've got a program of actions under that will use all of those different drivers to pull a successful action plan that you can implement. And it's really clear and practical. And so everyone knows exactly what needs to be done. The last point is around flexibility, and of course we are in evolving and changing policy environments, and it's something that we just kind of have to get used to, and so of course it's really important that we incorporate that flexibility of what's coming in the future into our plans so they don't become redundant like next week or next year. They can last a reasonable amount of time and give you that time to actually implement those actions. So what we've done, I think we did this with the council in Australia, is kind of looked at the strategic context and understood it, looking at all the political, economic, social, technological and legal and environmental factors, and identifying those things that are out of our control and that are in our control, and incorporating that into the context of your action development so that you can have a plan that lasts for a reasonable amount of time. That's just a very quick overview, but I think if you are planning to review or develop your circular economy plan, some of the key things that are really good to do at the start of your project is seek advice on the process. I mean, we're very happy to chat to anyone about the scope, even if the work is not coming our way, and just because we want your plans to be implementable and relevant. Also allow that time for a common understanding. If you can do that, you generate that buy-in, whether it's within your organisation, within your community, and then everyone kind of takes ownership if they've been involved in it, and it becomes a lot more easy to build on that and create some momentum. And it's really important to gather data to inform your story and to tell your story well. So one of the really effective things in a plan is being able to communicate to people, get them on the same page as you, and then everyone can move forward with their actual implementation. And I think that's it. Any questions?